Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new live stream. I'm Ariel. And as per tradition, if you're here on time or early, depends, tell me where you're from and what's in your drink. I'm looking at the chat right now, and let's begin with me. What am I drinking? I'm drinking Earl Grey tea, my favorite, in an Appfigures mug. So that's me on this Thursday here from New York City. Where are you from? What's in your cup? We're waiting for more people to shuffle in. We have a very interesting live stream, I think, for you today. I'm going to try something that I have not done before. I mean, kind of. Well, almost exactly. But it's a slightly different format. There's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of answers. And there's going to be your questions and answers. So, again, tell me where you're from in the chat. Let's get things warmed up as more people shuffle in. And let's see how things are going. Ooh, people are shuffling in. Okay, that was quick. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, subscribe quickly so you can talk in the chat. I have a bunch of questions coming up, and you can ask your own questions, and you can contribute. It's going to be great, kind of like a community. It's not just me talking. Well, it's really just me talking. But I'll say things that you put in the chat, so that's how it works. Ooh, we got London with iced espresso. Where's your Appfigures mug? So, funny that you ask. There's a question about where is the Appfigures mug. There's an easy way to get an Appfigures mug. Refer your friends to my newsletter, and when you hit, I forgot how many, but some number of referrals, I will ship you a mug. I will probably be the one shipping it to you, so get started quick. Ooh, we got Australia in the crowd. Wow, it's got to be late in Australia now. Thanks for joining us. I can still speak, even though we haven't barely started. Oh, wow, there's a whiskey drinker in the crowd from Israel. Well done. Well done. A Macallan 12. Macallan is the 12 is really good. You go up in years and it starts to taste like sand if you don't have that palate. I know I tried. So the 12 is just the right mix if you ask me. Although we're not here to talk about whiskey, but that could be a fun live stream for later. What else do we have? Ooh, Ukraine is in the crowd. Hello, Ukraine. I hope you're safe. Turkey is in the crowd. Turkey with Turkish coffee. Ha ha. Haha, well played. Well played. Brussels. Oh, wow. Again, we're international. This is amazing. I'm glad you're all here with me. I want to take a quick sip of this, and then we're going to jump right into it because it's time to start. And now it's down. I'll get back to it in just a little bit. It is midnight in Australia, and Michael's joining us. Well, thank you for joining us, Michael, at midnight. It's kind of like the World Cup that you have to wake up for at normal or weird, depends on where you are, times of the day and night. I kind of love that, so I hope that's the same feeling. I hope. In any case, let's jump into it. So my name is Ariel, and for those of you who know me, you know that I talk about ASO a lot. I do these live streams. I have multiple newsletters. I interview people from the industry, and one thing that happens all the time, and you can continue putting where you're from and what you're drinking in the chat as I'm talking. I can read and talk at the same time sometimes. So I do a lot of talking about App Store optimization and app marketing in general and apps in general. And one of the things that happens all the time is I get asked tons of questions. And some of those questions are really complicated. Some of those questions are really specific. Some of those questions are really generic. And some of those questions I have covered in at least 1 or 2 or 17 app or keyword teardowns over the last few years. So I thought for this live stream, what I'm going to do is I'm going to round up the most important questions that I feel have been asked super often or are still asked super often. And I'm going to answer them with you live with the idea that if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat and I can interactively answer them. So it's not just me answering a question because I can do that in a guide, and I probably have at some point, but it's actually me discussing a specific topic that starts with a question. I prepared 9 questions. Hopefully we'll get to all of them. We'll see. I'll try to go as quickly as I can without omitting any detail. Now, I'm going to start with the basics, but any question when it comes to App Store optimization can start in with the basics and really dip into very complicated, nuanced topics. One of my favorites is where to place keywords. And you think there's a name and a subtitle or a short description, depending on which store you're targeting, but there's actually a lot more to it, which is pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. So we're going to get into it. I prepared questions that go on the screen. Let's see if that works. Haha, it worked. So again, I'm going to be answering these questions, walking through them. If you have any questions or any follow-ups to this or anything to contribute at all, throw it into the chat. That's exactly what I'm going to be looking at. And I'm going to make sure I try to answer all of them. My chat is here. That's why my eyes keep disappearing, but my chat will eventually be here. I'll make that happen. So let's get into it. Question number one, I kept it simple, and you would be surprised how many people ask me this question. A lot of people write to me and say, ASO doesn't work. I don't know what to do with keywords. What are keywords? Why does the algorithm need them? What is an algorithm? All these sort of questions I kind of bundled into this one. So this one is kind of simple, but it's not really. Now, a lot of people think that keywords are somehow a magical way to tell the algorithm is what decides where to rank your app, And that's almost the case. Almost the case, because the algorithm is not waiting for your app to tell it where it is. It's supposed to do it on its own. That's the whole idea. The whole idea is people are sitting over at Apple and over at Google trying to figure out how to determine which apps are relevant based on their names and based on their metadata, which is other text-based stuff in most cases, in order to show them in search results. So they're not waiting for you to tell them, with one little exception. But what that means is that they are waiting for you to tell them because they're using information that you are providing in order to decide where to put your app. So the way keywords help with App Store optimization is they help the algorithm understand what your app does, what your app is for, and what your app is relevant for. And that's really the key here. The key here, you're helping the algorithm. We're not manipulating the algorithm. We're not forcing the algorithm. We're helping the algorithm, whether it's Apple or Google, to understand what the app does so it can figure out on its own, using its own rules and its own set of intelligence, as some of you, I think, might agree with, to place your app where it belongs. That's the whole idea. And that's why you don't have as much control as you would think, but you have all the control once you understand how this works. So one of the questions that kind of follow up after I say this is, how do you do it? So how do you use keywords? You place them in metadata, and that makes an impact. But that's where things become a little bit more interesting. So far, super basic, right? And if you've read any of my keyword teardowns or app teardowns, you know that this is the basics. This is the beginning, the foundation. That's why I'm starting with it. But how should you use keywords? That's where things get a little bit exciting. And I can probably spend multiple live streams just answering this question. But I'm going to answer it with what's easiest. It's easiest to say, if you're looking at your metadata, and in the case of Apple, on the App Store, it's your app's name, which some call title because of the subtitle, but I call name because it's a name. Name, subtitle, and keyword list. Keyword list is invisible, only you have access to it, but the name and the subtitle are visible, so we can learn from pretty much everything out there, which is what I do in the keyword teardown section that I have in the resources on our site. I'll drop a link to that later in the description if you haven't seen them. Hopefully you have. But if not, make sure you read some. But the idea is that on the Google side, you have something similar. You have the app name, you have a short description, kind of like a subtitle, and you don't have a keyword list, but you have a whole full description. And I'll talk about how to actually make use of it. I'm going to show you a tool that we have to help you with that. And I'm going to go into specifics on how different apps actually use the description on Google Play. And we're going to look at 3 that are kind of competing. Well, not kind of. 3 that are identically competing in how they do their keywords in the description and how that makes a difference. So the way you place them is you start at the beginning. The name is always first, and the first character is always first. So from left to right, in English at least, everything that you put in will be important. Meaning, if you're like most developers, you're probably going to put your app's, the name, your brand name, and as the first thing in the name, I said name too many times, but if your brand goes first in the name, that's what the algorithm is going to see as the most important thing about your app. And that's what it's going to like most about your app. So there's a trick to this. Flip it. Start with keywords and then put your brand name, and then you will rank for that keyword a little bit better. Now, I have many different types of keyword teardowns where I show how the placement actually makes a huge difference. And I won't get into all the details now because you can read those over on our resources section. Again, link is going to be in the description, but that's the idea. The idea is that when you start with a keyword, it helps the algorithm understand that that's what the app is about. As you continue from left to right, it starts to lose its weight. And so if you care about something a lot, put it in the beginning. If you care about something less, put it towards the end. If you care about something very little, shove it all the way at the end of the keyword list, because you just want to try it probably. What's at the end of the keyword list gets very little versus what's at the beginning of the name, which gets a lot. That's how it works. And so that's how keywords should be placed. And this goes pretty much the same for Google. On the Google side, the name is, again, the most important thing. Starting from left to right, in English at least, you want to have your most important keywords over at the beginning. And then as you continue, all those will just support it. And that goes all the way to the end of the description. So with Google, you have a few more options because the description gives you 4,000 or more characters that you can use. I think 4,000 roughly. But on the Apple side, you are limited to 30 characters for the name, 30 characters for the subtitle, and 100 characters, not words, characters, for the keyword list. And so you have to think about what do you want to use. And that kind of leads into the next question. And the next question has to do with, actually, before we go into the next question, there's one little thing. I had to look at my notes for this. One little thing that I get asked too often, and I'm not exactly sure why, but this is a question that comes from purists. Purists believe that you shouldn't have anything other than your brand name as your app's name, which I disagree with completely. And the reason is twofold. Thing number one, fold number one, if there are two folds, obviously. Fold number one is that the algorithm looks at the name, like I just said. And so if you're not putting something in the name, you're really just devaluing what the algorithm sees. But the other thing is, we have to also remember that we're optimizing for people. So even if you're number one, if a person sees you and they don't understand what the app does, they're not going to download it. That's just how it is. Attention spans are tiny at this point. They're minimal. And so if you're not capturing someone's attention really, really, really quickly, they're going to be gone. And you know what? The odds are your competitor is trying hard, whether it's with ASO or with optimization, all the optimizations that I'm talking about, and you're thinking, I should do this. Your competitor, who might also be sitting in this and watching me, is also saying, I should do this. So wherever you mess up, they're probably going to try and do better. And that's the idea, because you're going to try to outdo them. You see how this works? It's a vicious cycle in a way, but there can only be one number one position, one number two position, one number three position. So if an app goes up, another app has to go down. And so you're always battling someone. You're not just battling the algorithm. And so being number one doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the download. You're probably going to get the download because you're number one. But at the same time, if the user isn't really understanding what's going on, they're just going to skip over to the next app that makes it super simple to understand what's going on. And that's really what ends up happening. And that's important. So keep that in mind as you do more. And let me show you a quick example of what it looks like, because you have to have keywords in your app's name. The same goes for games. Games are a little bit behind for different reasons. That's a question I actually don't have on my question list today. Although if you have questions about games, drop them in the chat and I will take a look at them. But it's pretty much the same. So let me switch to my computer. See if this works. Haha, it worked, and we're looking at the wrong thing. And let's switch over to Keyword Inspector. So this is Keyword Inspector. It's a tool that we have on our platform where you put in a keyword, any keyword, you select a store, and you can easily see the results with additional information on top of them. The cool thing about this tool is that it works in real time in most cases, which means that we scan the App Store and Google Play throughout the day, all the time. Our ranks are updated every hour as opposed to every day, because it changes actually every hour. And the App Store made a few changes recently, and it's moving super fast. I'm talking changes happen within minutes. I have seen these results change 6 times in an hour. Not every 10 minutes exactly, but 6 times in an hour. So I've seen apps go up, go down, all within the span of minutes, which is incredible. That has never happened before. That's new for this year, so it's really important. So what we do with Inspector is, if the results aren't super fresh, we go and fetch them again, so you're always up to date. And that's how we make sure everything is really useful and really actionable. That's kind of the key of all of our ASO tools. So I loaded up dating just because it's the one easy keyword I thought about. You can see some information about it here. Obviously, it's very competitive. There are a lot of apps that are aiming for it, and it's fairly popular. But look at the apps. They're all using dating, the keyword, in their name. All the top results. I bet you if we scroll down enough, we're going to come across an app that doesn't use the term dating in its name, and that's why it's not going to be found when you look for dating. It's so competitive that that's a requirement at this point to have the term in the name. And many of the other keywords that I've looked at over the last few months in keyword teardowns really resemble the same. And when you come across a keyword that doesn't, you know that that's an opportunity. That doesn't mean that you don't have to have it. So if you're a purist out there and you're thinking to yourself, I don't really want to do this. I don't like this. I think it's ugly. You're free to think that way, but you're going to be in trouble if you're trying to rank because your competitors are probably doing something with the name. And so that's why it's super important. And I talked about question 2 a lot more than I expected, but that's really what it is. So use keywords in the name. I will talk about the description for Google and the keyword list for Apple in just a quick minute. I have questions about both because I get asked about them all the time. And also because I see mistakes that happen all the time. And those are easy mistakes to fix. We have tools for those too. So let's talk about the next question. Bring you back to my face. And let's talk about question number 3. And for question number 3 is a little bit more in-depth about the keyword list. Now, I've talked about the keyword list a little bit in past live streams. So if you have any questions about that, drop them in the chat. I've also written guides about it, which I will link to later on when this is done. But let's talk about the basics because I keep asking developers for their keyword list when they ask me questions about how should I rank for this keyword? Should I even try this keyword? These sort of general questions. And their keyword lists aren't always optimized. And these aren't always just developers who are starting out. These are not marketers who are starting out with ASO. These could be people who have been doing ASO for a long time and maybe didn't give a lot of attention to the keyword list or didn't understand how it works. And it's not very complicated, but at the same time, it is-ish. So I do have a guide that explains step-by-step how to optimize for the keyword list, but let me give you the gist. The gist is the keyword list is a list of words. It's not a list of terms. It's not a list of quoted words. It's not a list of things that are separated by a space. It's a list of words with commas and no spaces. And that's really mistake number 1. When you're aiming for a specific word, you should target that word. And so if you have keywords that are multiple words, use it only once. That's the cool thing about it. This is Apple specifically because Google doesn't do this, but on the Apple side, it's actually really easy to tell the algorithm what you want to be ranked for. And interestingly enough, up until maybe 6 to 8 months ago, the keyword list was useful. It wasn't amazing, but it was useful. And in 2022, I've been seeing the keyword list become amazingly useful, meaning what you put in there. And again, from left to right, most important to least important, when you do that right, it actually gives you a boost in search results. So you are influencing the algorithm's decision with the keyword list. And I think that's by design. I believe that's how Apple intends for it to be. And the reason that they put more emphasis on this is because it's so limited. So you can't really shove too many things into 100 characters. Again, it's 100 characters and not 100 words. So you can't really do all that much with 100 characters. You can if you do it right, obviously, but you can't do too much. And I think that's really the key. And let's see if we have any questions in the chat. I did look at the chat, but there's a question from Patrick who's saying, hello all, question, is there a tool to identify and learn about which keywords are searched the most, like Google provides for the web? Thanks in advance. And the answer is yes. So we have quite a few different ways of looking at keywords. And if you are looking for some very generic way to understand what people are searching for right now, send me an email and I have something in the works that I can talk to you about. If you are looking for something specific, something for your app, maybe it's an existing app, maybe it's an idea you have, but you know what you want to do with it, I would go into Keyword Inspector and go to the related keywords. And what we do there is we aggregate keywords that are related and then sort by popularity. And what you're going to see there, and you know what, let me show you. Let me show you very quickly. So we are in Keyword Inspector now, and we can go to related keywords. And now we're looking at keywords related to dating. We can easily sort them by popularity, and we can also filter by competitiveness. So if you have a good idea of what you're aiming for, this is the way I would do it, because that's really easy, and this keeps you organized, and this keeps you focused. If you have no idea what you're looking for, you're just looking to kind of browse the app store for keywords that people are searching for, again, send me an email. I might have something for you in the very near future. It's an idea that we have. I can't say more about it, but send me an email. So thank you for the question, Patrick. Another question from Daniel, who's asking, when testing short descriptions on Google Play Store, do they count as keywords for indexing that version of the page? Thank you. So when you say, Daniel, testing, if you mean A/B testing, the answer is no. Everything that goes into A/B test is completely ignored by the algorithm in my experience. And so that's mostly maybe to test conversion, so you know what's happening with your audience. But if you're testing it, meaning you're changing it and you're going to change it again in the future, that definitely works. I have a feeling you're talking about A/B testing though. So no, in my experience, it does not make any difference, and the algorithm knows to not look at that at all. So that's that. Let's see if we have any more questions. There are some follow-ups. Ooh, a question from Olga. Olga is asking, if I double one keyword in name subtitle or short description, will it work better? The answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm going to talk about this. There's a question that I have coming up that deals with the repetition. I'll explain why it doesn't work, but it doesn't. It doesn't from experience and also from understanding how the algorithm works. So just don't do it. I call it the cardinal sin of ASO because a lot of developers believe that if they just repeat the same word over and over, it's going to help them. It doesn't. They actually get penalized, not exactly directly, but just because of the way the algorithm works. And that's why you don't see it for a lot of apps, because most apps have figured it out. You see it in some categories, and in some categories, by weird happy accident, it doesn't penalize them as much. But it's still a penalty, and it's still a problem. So no, definitely don't do it. No repetition. Helps everyone when you don't. So that's that. Let's see what else. Another question from Dalton, who's asking, how long does it take for the new keywords to take effect? Another question I have lined up. So in a few minutes, we'll talk about how long it takes to see results. The answer to that isn't exactly cut and dry. And it has to do with your competitors, of course, and the industry you're in, and the niche you're in, and your performance. So we'll get to that too. And then a follow-up is, how important are translations for keywords? And I don't have a question about that, so we should talk about that. When it comes to translations, I've been looking into that quite a lot over the last few months, and I've been talking to a lot of members about this and a lot of viewers about this. And it seems that one of the most common questions that I get is in our section of the keyword suggestions on the platform on Appfigures, where you can go and get suggestions for your app. Or in Keyword Discover, where apps are ranked, or in competitor keywords, basically everywhere where there are keywords for other apps, including yourself. When we look at other countries, specifically non-English speaking countries, you tend to see more English keywords. And people think that maybe something is broken, or maybe we don't scan all the right non-English keywords. And that is not the case, because those are also on the list. They're just ranked below, and that's for a reason. If you think about it, many more apps, I would say, are not localized versus localized. And what that means is that when people are searching for not a specific brand name, but for some sort of intent, they are likely to get better results if they search in English versus if they search in their local language when they're outside of the US or outside of an English-speaking country. And so I think a lot of people are actually getting used to searching in English first and maybe then in their native language, because they know that they're going to get more results and better results overall, because some apps don't localize and they're not going to get found when you just look for them in other languages. I know that Google gives you the ability as a developer to use Google Translate to automatically translate a bunch of stuff from your metadata. I imagine that works. I kind of feel like that could work against an app if the translation doesn't end up being correct or is like off by just a little bit, but it's very confusing or kind of offensive. And I've seen all these happen before. So if you are localizing, I would recommend taking the time to do it right. But that's why developers don't do it right or don't do it at all. That's what I was going to say. And so the idea is that people are searching in English. And what we've noticed is that people are searching in English, but if you include the term both in English and in the local language, you're probably going to do better. So if you are localizing, make sure to include English keywords in the localization. And if you're not localizing, make sure to include keywords in other languages in your English metadata in the keyword list, most likely for the countries that you want to target the most. But it's usually the other way around. You want to target both localized and English at the same time. And that's a really important thing that I don't know if it's always been like this. I started noticing this again over the last maybe 6 to 8 months, and I think there has been a huge shift in how much effort Apple specifically put into the App Store over the last 6 to 8 months, probably a little bit before, and we're now seeing that. So to me, that's really exciting because it means that stuff is continuing to improve. And to all those who say that the App Store is dead and ASO is impossible and you have to just have big budgets, that's all false. That's all false. It's really about being able to help the algorithm again make sure that it understands your app. If you take the time to do that, you're probably going to be in a good point where you can see results from ranks. It's not going to happen overnight because nothing good happens overnight in most cases. But it's going to be one of those things that you give it enough time and it eventually happens. And that's really what we're aiming for. This is organic growth, and organic growth is not the kind you can just turn on and turn off. You slowly build it, but then once you do, it continues. And that's really the idea. Okay, we have a bunch more questions from the chat, so let's get into those as well. Let's see. What's the next? Daniel says, thanks. You're welcome. How should we proceed when picking keywords for languages that don't have a popularity score? That's really tough. A question from Leonardo, and that's a good question. When a country doesn't have a popularity score, it means that Apple doesn't recognize it for Apple search ads in the specific case of Apple. And the reason why they don't have a popularity score is because that comes directly from Apple, and Apple doesn't recognize the country, so there's not much to do. What I would go for is I would look at keywords that are popular in your most important country, whether it's the US or really any other country, and use those keywords to target and do that in the localized language as well and see how well that works. If in many cases, and depending on how generic the keyword is, in my experience, if it's popular in one country and it's not country specific or it's not culturally country specific, it's probably going to be similar in other countries. You can see that a lot with business tools, with kind of generic utilities like to-do lists and things of that nature, and reminders and kind of tools that really everyone needs. They might need it less completely, but it doesn't mean that they don't need it. And that's where you're going to see the popularity. So that's really what I would do. And Leonardo continues and says, I know repetition is bad for App Store, but what about Google Play? Should we repeat keywords in the title and description, for example? So the answer is yes and no and maybe. I'm going to talk about the description in a few chat messages as I want to go through them. But for the name and the short description, the answer is no, you don't need repetition. I believe Google also now says that you don't need to repeat them. And so I wouldn't repeat them between the name or the short description. On Google Play, the description is very different than other things on the Apple side. So we have to separate that. And in the description, you should repeat keywords. You have to actually repeat keywords for them to be even considered keywords. So Apple has 100 characters, and everything in the 100 characters is considered a keyword because it's so limited. Why not? But on the Google side, you have 4,000 characters for a long description, and so not all those are going to be considered keywords. Google can't do that. It doesn't make any sense. So there you have to follow some specific set of rules to make sure that you tell Google, hey, this is a keyword. Kind of make sure that you read it as a keyword. And that's, I think, my next question on this list. So let's take a look at my next question. We're up to number 4. Do keywords in the description matter? It's as if I knew this was going to happen, and we didn't coordinate this. And the answer is, for Apple, Absolutely not. The keyword is complete, the description is completely ignored. But for Google, it's a very good source of keywords. The strength of it is not crazy amazing, which means if your description is not super optimized, the world's not going to end. But if it is super optimized, it's going to give you a nice little boost. And when it comes to ASO, you always want to have everything optimized. Maybe not all at the same time if you don't have the time to do all of it, but if you're working through it, the description should be kind of high on the list for Google Play. So let me give you an example. Actually, let's talk about what I'm talking about here. So how do you tell Google that in the description, a word is a keyword, that you actually care about it? And for that, we have to think like an algorithm would. And it's not actually all that difficult, it's repetition. Meaning when the algorithm sees that in a long body of text, thousands of words, thousands of characters, I mean, a keyword or a word is repeated or a term is repeated, multiple words making a keyword, it knows that the app is probably relevant for those particular words. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. There's really not much crazy going on. You just have to make sure that you repeat it enough times and that you use it in a way that looks like you're talking about the keyword in relationship to your app. We call that keyword density. Keyword density is, very simply put, the percentage of times, yes, of how many times a keyword appears out of how many keywords you have or how many words you have in your description as a percentage. I talked about that backwards, but you get the idea, hopefully. So the more it appears, the higher the percentages, the more Google is likely to think, yes, this is a keyword. This is something I should associate with this app. In more professional speak, it's called indexing. This is something I should index. I don't like the word indexing because it's really, I don't know, it doesn't really mean much at this point. So, but I do know that it exists. So you want to target a very specific range of percentages because too little and it's going to get ignored. Too much and Google's going to try to think, this app is trying to force us into something we don't necessarily want to do. So you can't overdo it and you can't underdo. You have to be somewhere in the middle. Now, the range is not something anyone knows. It's not something Google ever talks about. It's one of those things that you just have to know from trial and error. And in my experience, looking at quite a few descriptions, I put it at somewhere between 2 and 3-ish%, maybe 4, maybe, but really not less than 2 and not more than 3 or 4. And different people will tell you different numbers just because it's so vague and because the description is not the most important thing in Google Play, but it is very important. And so your mileage may vary and it's something that you really have to do and iterate over. But one easy way to do it is with a tool, and we built a tool that we have not announced because we just soft launched it 2 weeks ago and we wanted to see how many people will use it. So if you've used it, great. If you haven't, now you're going to get to see it. But before we talk about tools, I have a request for you. If you haven't already, give this video a like. I'm trying to get to 100 likes on one video. I've not gotten there yet. I've gotten to 68, I think. So if you like this video and you like the content and you like me, give the video a like. It's down below. It's super easy. You don't get subscribed in any way. Please and thank you. Alrighty. So let's take a look at the keyword density tool that we have. And let's take a look at actual data. That's really my goal here. So we're back to my computer and let's make the question go away for now. And I already have it open. And what this keyword density tool does is it loads up a description or takes text from you. And then it shows you what the algorithm sees. So we can easily see what the algorithm sees here. That's a weird circle, but it's a circle nevertheless. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are targeting for the keywords you actually care about the right density. And we will help you with that over here by giving you suggestions and pointing out issues. Now, the cool thing about this, the thing that I like the most is not just being able to see this so easily, so quickly, is also that you can load it up for any app. So I loaded up Tinder because I looked at dating before and it was fresh on my mind. And I was expecting that the description for Tinder would have dating as its the #1 keyword, indicating to Google that this app is all about dating, but it's not. The most repeated keyword in this body is Tinder. And even that is not hitting enough density. So as the algorithm sees it for Google Play, a lot of these keywords are really just ignored. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense for this description. It's kind of long, it's using a lot of characters, but at the same time, it's not really doing much to help with App Store optimization on Google Play, which is kind of mind-boggling. You would think that one of the biggest app for dating would be able to do that, but that's not really what it is for Tinder. So then I started thinking, what if we do it for some other competitor? And an immediate competitor that came to mind is Bumble. So we're loading up, this is Bumble's description coming from Google Play. And this is a little bit more interesting. So someone tried at Bumble, obviously. Let's take 2 keywords away just to see what's being targeted here. And now we're talking, look, dating is above 2%, Bumble is above 2%. I don't know if people is all that important, but apparently it is. Not exactly 2%, but it's getting close. New, I guess, just joins everything else. And you can see that someone at Bumble used this or a similar tool to try and figure out where to place all these keywords or how to repeat them. And then I said, let's look at another competitor. Hinge is a big competitor. I think it's number 3 in really everything that I look at when it comes to dating, when it's revenue or downloads or anything else. And now we're talking. Look at this. The most important keyword that Hinge is putting out in its description is actually dating at 2.75%, which means it crosses that minimum threshold and it's telling Google, hey, this app is all about dating. And that's exactly what you want to do. So I really like this tool because I can do this to any app and I can do this to any competitor, but really it's all about me and I can then load up my app, in this case, the Appfigures app, and I can rewrite my description to fit and I can try everything. So this is completely editable. And if I wanted to use this, if I'm Hinge and I want to use this, I can add to get off dating apps for good, right? I mean, I don't know if this makes grammatical sense, but I can edit it right here and I can see how it makes a difference over here. And then I can see 2 and even 3-word sentences. So this is incredibly important if you are optimizing a description. And if you are just writing a description to have a description, that's also good. You might, get lucky and maybe it'll work. But as we saw with Tinder, that's probably not the case. So we can't really look at that and say, worth it. So if you're optimizing your description, for Google Play, you should be. For Apple, don't worry about it. It's not going to give you really any serious boost. Or no, it's not going to give you any boost at all. That's something we know. So that was question number 5, I want to say. Let's go to question number 6. Should important keywords be repeated? And I've said this before, and I will say it again. The answer is absolutely not. No repetition. But let's talk about why. The idea that repetition is helpful comes from, in my opinion, the web, something I've done in what feels like a previous lifetime. But on the web, repetition is important because we're working against an algorithm that's very similar to what we just looked at with the description and Google, and repetition being a way of saying out of 4,000 characters, these characters are what's important to my website or to my app. But on the App Store, and now with very short names on Google Play and short descriptions, it doesn't, because there isn't a lot of room. So here's how the algorithm on the App Store side works, just to give you an idea. What it does is it combines the name, subtitle, and keyword list. And once it has all of those together as one big string of characters, it omits repetition, but it omits from left to right. And so we said before that left to right is most important. It omits from left to right, so it takes away from where it's the most important and devalues it as it goes across. And that's really why it penalizes you. And so if you're repeating a word twice in the name, for example, the mention that is going to be seen by the algorithm is the last one. The last one is not the one from left to right, the beginning, so it's going to have less weight. If you're doing the same with a subtitle, same thing. And we know that the subtitle is has less weight overall in general, so that's going to give you even less weight. And if you're repeating in the keyword list, something that wasn't a big issue up until, again, 6 to 8 months ago, now is an issue and now will penalize you, because now you're really putting the keyword in the worst spot in your metadata. And so do not repeat it doesn't really help. Similar thing happens on Google in the name and short description, and that's why you don't see a lot of repetition, again, for most apps. Most apps either figured it out or listen to me, but mostly just understood that it doesn't make a lot of sense. It also takes away from characters that you could be using for something else. 30 characters for a name is not that much. And so if you're using a word that is 6 or 7 characters twice, you just lost 6 or 7 characters plus a space, most likely, or some sort of a delimiter. So it's kind of a lose-lose the way I see it. That's why I call it the cardinal sin of ASO. And that's really what I believe it is all about. And so no repetition. Repetition is bad. No repetition. Repetition is bad. If you take anything from this live stream, it's a repetition is bad. And I kept this for question number 6 because I wanted to warm you up just so you know that I know what I'm talking about. So let's jump into questions again. I see a few more that have joined since I last looked at it. Let's see. A question from Leonardo is, can you give us a quick overview of how keywords work for Amazon App Store? And the answer is no, I cannot, because I don't really look at the Amazon App Store all that often. Amazon has a really weird search engine, has everything about Amazon is really strange. I can't say that it's a place where you should go and put your apps and spend time and effort on it. There are very minimal cases where that would actually work. I'm not saying it's a terrible place, but that's not a place I would focus my attention first or second, maybe third. Third, I would rather just take a break and not do anything. So I'm sorry, Leonardo, I can't help you there. Not at least for right now. I'm actually looking at the Mac App Store because that's very similar to the iOS App Store, and we've been getting a lot of questions about it, and there are some tools that will come out to help with that. So I will know about the Mac App Store, and maybe in the future, I'll take a look at Amazon. If you actually want me to take a look at Amazon and try to make sense out of it, leave me a comment on this video and give it a like. But leave me a comment on this video so I can check it out later, and I'll see if that's something people want. And if it is, I'll do it. And then we can build tools around it. A question from Norden, who's asking, if a keyword is made of 2 words, do we have to have 2 words in keyword sections, or 2 keywords separated by a comma? So in the keyword list, I believe this is a question about the keyword list. In the keyword list, you want to separate the words completely. And once you separate the words, you want to eliminate duplication. So for example, if I'm targeting the keywords fun dating and dating game, I don't know why anyone would do that, but let's just say dating is kind of a game anyway. So if I'm doing that in my keyword list, I don't need to repeat the keyword dating twice. I can have fun, I can have game, and I can have dating, all separated by a comma. And that's what I would do. Now, we have a tool to do that for you. So you can take your keyword list, you can drop it into the tool, and it will do all those. It will follow all the rules and clean it up for you, and will allow you to experiment. I'll link to that again in the description so you have access to it. It's a really great tool. It's, I think, one of our first ever ASO tools that we produced back in, I don't even remember when, a whole bunch of years ago. What feels like, it was pre-COVID, so it feels like a different lifetime. But we have all that in there, and you can use it to do that automatically, or you can just follow the rules and do it. It's pretty simple. And let's see. Another question from Olga. If relevant keywords with higher volume for our game in English or for Spanish locale, should we write the description English for Google Play or Spanish, but using the English keywords? That's a really interesting one and a tough one, because at the same time, you're optimizing for the algorithm and you're also optimizing for people. So I would say if you're localizing, you should always localize the entire thing. Meaning, if you're localizing the name, you should localize your short description and your long description. And again, follow the same rules on optimizing your description so it makes sense. And that's what I would do. I wouldn't necessarily try to mix and match languages in the description. I think it would look really hokey. I could see an experiment where if your description is not taking up all the characters, you add a paragraph at some point throughout, not at the bottom, because the bottom of the description is kind of ignored or devalued by Google, but somewhere in the middle, paragraph in English that talks about the game, very succinct, maybe 3 or 4 sentences. I don't really know how to break it up in a way that would make sense and would seem reasonable to humans, but I do believe there is a way to do that. If you end up doing that, I would love to know how it goes. So email me and let me know. And if you need help with that, also email me, because now I'm kind of a little bit intrigued and I want to see what would happen. I'm just curious. I don't think that's something I have ever done. Next question from Leonardo. How does Google Play cross-language search works? If I have terms in English metadata, will it appear on a search when a store is configured to Portuguese, for example? And the answer is, it really depends. I've seen, and this is across both Apple and Google, I've seen the algorithm attempt. I don't think it works for all the keywords. I don't think it actually works for all the words. I don't know if this is something that Apple or Google hard-coded. In the case of Google, I would imagine absolutely not, and it's something that has to do with automatic translation. In the case of Apple, maybe. I've heard funnier things. But I've not seen it happen consistently, so I would not bank on it happening for your app. If you know for a fact, again, using something like Keyword Inspector, that when you search in English, you get Portuguese, or when you search for Portuguese, you get English, in your specific niche, whether it's one keyword or multiple keywords, or maybe a term that is just shared enough, then the answer is yes. But I've not seen it consistently enough to know that it's happening across the board, and what I'm looking at is just kind of getting messed up. Alrighty, a quick sip of tea, something I haven't had in a long time. Thank you for all the questions, by the way, everyone. This is really good, and somehow we're almost running out of time, which is something I'm seriously getting used to. But I've been doing pretty good on time over the last few live streams, so good. We were on question number 6, so let's head into question number 7. And question number 7 is, should you use all characters possible? Now, this is a really tough question. You may be sitting there thinking, of course. And I would tell you that the answer is probably of course. But it isn't. Unfortunately, it isn't. So if you follow my keyword teardowns, you know that earlier in the year, I found a bug that I wrote about that would scream, do not do this, because it's going to be problematic. And so high level, the answer is attempt to use all the keywords, or attempt to use all the characters, I should say, because again, we're helping the algorithm. We're not trying to do anything too crazy, but we're trying to give it an opportunity, as many opportunities as possible, really to understand what our app does. So we're helping, we're assisting. More words would obviously help do that. But there are 2 reasons why you shouldn't do that. And one is focus. The other is a bug. The bug is on the Apple side specifically. So let's talk about focus, because that's more important, and in my opinion, that's more relevant. But focus means that if the algorithm gives your app, or any app really, 100% of its algorithm juice spanning across all the words that you have, the more words you have, the less each one gets. So that's a really important concept, and something that most people don't think about. But if you have, let's say 100% is 100, just to keep things simple, and you have 10 words in your name and your subtitle, let's just say, then each word gets 1/10 of what the algorithm can give it. Now, it's a little bit different because, again, words in the beginning from left to right get more, and words towards the end get less. But overall, to keep it simple, they would get 10 out of 100. So if you had 5, they would each get 20 out of 100. And if you had 3, they would each get 33.33333. So you end up with a decision you need to make. And the decision is, how much do you want to focus on a specific keyword? And the more the answer is, I want to focus all the way, the less keywords you want to have total, the less words you want to have total, the less characters you want to have total, because you don't want to give the algorithm too many things to spread the algorithm juice across. That's the idea. Now, how do you know if you want to focus or not? Because the answer is you always want to focus, absolutely. But at the same time, if you focus on one word or one keyword, you're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to be able to rank across many terms. And that's really what you want. You want to rank across as many terms as possible. Hopefully, I'm not talking too fast. If I am talking too fast, let me know in the chat. I'm clearly talking too fast because I'm talking too fast for myself. I'll try and slow down. I can't. Anyway, so if you are thinking, should I actually focus on one keyword, 1 or 2, or should I expand across most? The answer should come from, 1, your ability, your performance. Your performance meaning your ratings, mostly your ratings, and also from the competition. So if the competition is very focused on one or two keywords and your app isn't, unless you have a kick-ass performance, like 10x the number of new ratings over a long period of time, not just happening overnight, only then you can do it. But if they're focused, you kind of have to follow and you have to make sure that you're competing with them in that particular game. So those are the options you have. And that's what should make the difference between, yes, I want to focus as much as I can, or no, I want to spread my algorithm juice across as many keywords. Now, as you grow and as you have more ratings and as you have more performance, you can get across more keywords and get more visibility. But in the beginning specifically, or if you are getting into ASO for the first time and you have not done it before, or if your app is not ranked in many keywords, that's what I would try and do. And there are some strategies to figure out how much you should focus on it. Again, it would take me a whole live stream to talk about those, but the idea is you can use a tool like Keyword Inspector. Keyword Inspector is my favorite tool because I'm a very utilitarian. It's the most utilitarian tool I think we've ever made. Probably not true, but that's how I feel right now. So use a tool like Keyword Inspector to understand what's happening at the top. And I always look at the top 5. I feel like there's a natural break below 5 that if you analyze the top 5, they make sense. If you analyze below 5, you can see that the algorithm is trying things. You don't want to be in the trying things category. You want to be in the algorithm knows what it's doing. And so I always look at the top 5, and those will guide you towards understanding whether you should do it or whether you shouldn't. An additional thing is you can go from Keyword Inspector into competitor keywords. And instead of talking, I will actually show you. And you can go from Keyword Inspector to competitor keywords. And what that will allow you to do is see all the other keywords that the top results are ranking in. So I'm going to compare the top 5 because that works for me very quickly, and that's kind of a shortcut that I like. And we're going to see now all the keywords that Hinge and Bumble and HUD and Plenty of Fish are all ranking in right now. And we'll be able to see who's ranking in more, who's ranking in less. And I mean, this is very interesting. Less than Bumble, less than HUD. Kind of the same as Plenty of Fish. So Hinge is a little bit more focused overall. And that focus is maybe what's earning it that number 1 position. There's a lot more, and dating is a very complicated category. I've talked about it in keyword teardowns and in app teardowns a whole bunch of times, and I keep getting questions about it all the time. So there's a lot more complexity here, but even removing that complexity, this is exactly what I was just saying, and I didn't even intend for that to happen. I have not looked at this before this live stream. I guarantee it. So focus is one of the most important things that you want to look at. And if you know that you need to be focused, then you want to use fewer words. And it's okay to not use the maximum, the 30 characters, but only if you need to. And if you know that you can spread a little bit more, then you should do it. Now, the other thing is a bug. And the bug is every time you have non-alphanumeric characters, meaning ASCII characters, a dash, a colon, a lot of other things. If you have those, and I have a whole guide about it, a whole keyword teardown about it, if you're curious about the specific nuances, so I'll drop that in the description later. But the idea is that every time you have characters that are not alphanumeric, the algorithm sees them as more than one character. Why? I don't know. I'm sure there's a very technical explanation somewhere out there with how they're defined in a database or something, and that makes sense, but it sees as multiple characters. So you put them in and you have 30 characters in your name, let's say. The algorithm sees that one character is 2, and now your name, as far as the code sees it on the Apple side, it's 31 characters. It's not going to allow you to have 31 characters, so it trims the last character. And if that character is something useful for a keyword that you want to target, it's just not going to work, because the part of the algorithm that sees your app is not going to see it. I forget which keyword teardown is actually the one where I had a very amazingly clear example of this, but I will find it and I will link to it later, because words do not describe this well. You have to see it in action and you'll be like, wow. And why doesn't Apple fix this? I don't know. I don't know. If there's anyone from Apple in the crowd, hopefully you can go and fix this, or at least tell us why it's not fixed. But that's an issue that I found. It's been like that for a long time. I've seen it for about a year now. I didn't want to actually talk about it until I was sure that it was an issue. And so now that I know, I feel like everyone should be aware of this and make sure that you're not falling into that little trap by accident, because that can just ruin keyword optimization, and you're going to think that something else is wrong and you're not going to know why, and it's going to be a whole thing. So I have 2 more questions. Let's see if I can squeeze them in the last 5 minutes of this live stream. Let's go for question 8. Is it worth optimizing for long tail keywords? If you don't know what long tail keywords are, those are keywords that are very long. And usually those keywords that are very long, meaning 2 or 3 words, usually they don't have an amazingly high popularity score because it's not fun to type super long words and they're so specific that fewer people look for them. But generally, I would say it's not worth optimizing for them, because for most apps and for most games, you don't have to. Most apps and most games have a very clear intent and a very clear reason for existing. And that reason can usually be described in 1 or 2 word keywords in most cases. And then you have other situations where either an app is way too specific, like super specific, maybe location specific, location like down to a city. Or maybe it's a niche that not many people actually care about as much as other things, or not many people are coming to the App Store or Google Play to find it. Something like dance instructions, for example. 3 or 4 years ago, someone asked me if a dance studios app, how it should use keywords, because most of the keywords it's targeting are actually very low popularity. And I looked through a bunch and they were very low popularity. And that's understandable. People are not coming to the App Store to learn how to dance. They're probably going to YouTube. That's what I would do. So what you would do is not give up on ASO and instead try to target as many 5 or as many low popularity keywords as you can find. And that's the idea. And that reverses what I just said about focus. So you want to unfocus as much as possible, because ranking for a low popularity keyword is actually not that complicated. And so you can probably rank for a lot of low popularity keywords fairly easily without a lot of performance if you're just using your name, subtitle, or short description and your keyword list or description pretty well. Now, I would not recommend this to most apps, because most apps that do this would be giving up the actual keyword that they should be focused on. But in a case where you can't or you don't have that, that's a good strategy. And that's something that I would recommend. It doesn't come up very often, and even the low popularity keywords are becoming more popular. When I was looking at dancing 3 or 4 years ago at a conference, it was much less popular than it is now, just a few years later. And so things are shifting more towards apps, and Apple and Google are both doing more to make sure that the App Store experience is as welcoming as possible. I mean, look what happened to Google Play just over the last few weeks. Complete redesign, everything changed. Some patterns there I don't like at all, but they are still built to make it much easier to get apps. And so they're definitely trying to get those popularities up. They're working to help you. But if you can't find that yet, then yes, I would go for long tail keywords. And last one that I promised I'd talk about, and the question I always get, I don't always get this as a question. Usually I get this as a complaint. Complaint along the lines of, I did something yesterday and I'm not number 1 now. What is happening? And the answer to this is, it depends. It depends on a few things. So starting at the top, Apple is pretty fast these days. Google, faster than it used to be, but it's still pretty slow. On Apple, I would expect results within a few weeks. On Google, I would expect results within a month, maybe a little bit more. So 2 to 3 weeks, maybe against 4 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. But those numbers are really generic and they're not all that necessarily useful, because it has to do with trends. The algorithms at this point care more about trends over time than they do about specific points in time, with the one little exception that I actually talked about in this week's Keyword Teardown on Tuesday, if you know what I'm talking about, and I'll get to that in a minute. But what's happening is the algorithm tracks changes over time. And so if something little happened, maybe you change your keywords just today, it's not necessarily going to say, let's put this app as number 1, even if it makes sense to. We need to see how well it's doing. And that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind. These things take time. Now, if you don't necessarily have the right performance to compete, or you're just on the cusp, meaning your ratings are very similar to everyone else or just below, it's going to take you more time until the algorithm really establishes you as a contender from a performance standpoint. So it could take longer. If you are both making sure that you're optimizing to get more ratings and at the same time also changing your keywords, that's kind of a 1-2 boom. And so that's what you should be doing. That's what you want to be doing. And every time I see anyone on Twitter mentioning their way of getting more ratings, I saw a tweet like that this morning, I immediately retweet it and like it, because that's really what you have to be focusing on in addition to all of this. This works with that. So the two happen together. Getting more ratings will, again, give the algorithm just that sense that your app is doing things. It's going places, you know? And so that's what I would look at, and that kind of cuts across. So that's really all I had in terms of questions. I can't believe we managed to get through all 9. I didn't think that would happen, and I even got to use my computer. Again, a reminder to give this video a like. Likes really help me. And I've not looked at likes, so I don't know if you've done it, but if you haven't, please do. And let me see if I can find 1 or 2 more questions from the chat just to end this with the chat. And let's see. Julian is asking, besides program name, subtitle, and keywords, how is company name used in the search? Ooh, that's a good one that I didn't get to actually talk about. But the company name used to be very important. And that's why you see some really old apps, especially on the App Store, with company names that look like a bunch of keywords. They are actually a bunch of keywords. That has been devalued over time, and so now it adds a tiny bit, but not really. I don't think it fits in with the repetition. So if you have if you have a keyword in your company name and your app name, it's probably fine from everything I've seen. I've not seen that being a penalty for any app. I have been talking to a few members who were saying that in-app purchase names are being ranked for them. I haven't seen that at an amazing scale. I've been looking at it for about a month now. So that's something I'm continuing to explore. I would say that if you have in-app purchases that can have keywords in their names, use it. It can't hurt. Let's just put it this way. And I believe that's really all the time we have. If you have any questions that I didn't get to answer, drop them in the comments below, because I will go through the comments later and respond in the comments. That's what I do after every teardown. And if you stuck around until the end, I'm going to drop a promo code in case you are not using the tools just yet and you want to give them a try, so you can try them with a bit of a smile on your face. So I'm going to drop that in the description as soon as this is done and the video goes live as a video. If you haven't upgraded yet, now is a great time. If you have upgraded, you can go to the next tier with the same promo code. It's going to apply to everyone. I'm nice today. And that's pretty much it. Again, any questions, drop them in the comments. I'm going to look through those. You can also find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is going to be in the description. Other than that, I'm going to be back in 2 weeks when I talk about a recap of WWDC, something that I've been doing for the last 5 years. It's going to be year 5 with the same guest, Joe Chaplinsky. It's going to be great. Hopefully WWDC is going to be great. We'll see. If you're going, that's all I have then. Enjoy the rest of your day or night or very late at night. So good night to Melbourne. And I will see you in just a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone.